Aloha and welcome back to the Kauai Real Estate Podcast. My name is Jamie Friedman, and today I'm going to go over seller obligations for a property sale in according to the Hawaii purchase contract. I'm going to use the version that was released in May of 2023. There may be a new version released in November, but based on my past 19, 20 years experience, it's more likely that the language will change, but the required contingencies and information generally stay the same. There are just some nuances to the contingencies in the contract that change, but essentially the same documentation information is required. So the first thing required by a seller in a purchase contract is a seller's disclosure. Though there are some exemptions and exceptions, generally the seller is required to provide a disclosure to disclose all material facts. Even in those circumstances where a disclosure is not really required, sellers should be disclosing items and issues that they are aware of. And fortunately, the Hawaii Association of Realtors provides a form for the sellers to fill out, and your agent, hopefully me, will be providing that to you to complete. In the disclosure, there's a requirement to provide documentation for any solar, photovoltaic, or alarm systems that you own that are on the property. Alternatively, if there are any leases or contracts for systems as opposed to owning them outright, the requirement to provide those documents is in a different contingency, but also required by the purchase contract. As part of the disclosure or an extension of the disclosure, if you have a leasehold property, you're going to need to order and provide the leasehold documents. And also, if you are part of a CPR, you'll need the CPR documents and a CPR map. Generally, a current CPR map is requested. You'll need any of the following applicable documents: association documents, covenants, conditions, and restrictions, as well as the subdivision and title documents. And these may include easements, encroachment agreements, and so on. If furnishings are included in your sale, you'll need to provide an inventory of furnishings. And the same goes for rental documents. If you're selling a rental, either a long-term tenant is staying or there's a short-term vacation rental and there are reservations that are transferring, you'll need to provide the related documents. It is not uncommon for buyers also to request income and expense statements. For homes and land, the contract will also likely require K1 staking or K2 survey of the property. The survey includes the staking as well as a map and a report. Typically with my sellers, I recommend that they do a K2 survey, especially if there are any items along the property line like fencing or walls, or if the eaves or any buildings are close to the property line. And some areas like Princeville require a hedge agreement if you have a hedge on the property line, so you'll want to know if that's in place. Also, if selected in the contract, the seller needs to provide all of the following in the seller's possession in terms of existing warranties and plans. I typically ask my sellers to put all warranties in a drawer to the right of the stove. Of course, if there isn't a drawer to the right, I suggest the left. But that's just an agent trick and, my consistent fallback, so I always know where those documents will be at closing. There also may be a requirement for a termite inspection report. This is typically a negotiable contingency. Apologize for my stuttering. But most contracts will have the buyer select the pest control operator and the seller will schedule and pay for the inspection. And the contract has the seller paying for any recommended treatments, regardless of who pays for the report. If there's a possibility or likelihood that there are termites on the property, I recommend sellers have the inspection in advance and take care of any of the recommended treatments, especially if tenting is necessary, because right now tenting scheduling dates are often 1 to 2 months out. So a couple other contingencies that may or may not be in the contract, or typically are actually: removal of items from the property, that's trash, junk. That includes like the boards under the house that you think somebody might want to use later. Unless the buyers agree to keep those things or have those things left on the property, they all need to be removed. Cleaning in our purchase contract is fairly extensive. It includes appliances, cupboards, drawers, floors, jalousie, screens, and windows. and the carpet should be professionally shampooed. If there's a pet treatment requested, if you have pets on the property, a buyer may request a pet treatment. That should be after the carpets are cleaned, but prior to closing. So, last but not least, sellers are responsible for providing keys, and the contract is pretty specific about what keys are required. All existing, but at least one set of functioning keys and controls. That's keys for the entry, the interior, the mailbox, the pool, any security areas, parking areas, storage areas, and all garage door openers. Though the buyer is responsible to pay like deposit fees, for example, like if you're in a condo and there's a $50 deposit fee for the pool key, the buyer needs to pay that. Buyers also, not that this is important in a seller's podcast, but buyers are encouraged to rekey entry doors and obviously reprogram garage doors. So though it's not noted in the contract, the closing of the property is actually when the sale records with the state of Hawaii. So all buyer documents and funds and seller closing documents need to be completed and with escrow 2 business days prior to closing. Sellers can actually sign weeks in advance if they would like to, and they do not have to be on island for closing. So, in quick review, sellers are obligated to provide any or all of the following in the purchase contract: seller's disclosure, leasehold and other documents, solar, photovoltaic, and alarm documents, furnishings inventory, staking service or K2 survey, termite inspection report, and any recommended treatments, existing warranties and plans. They're also responsible for removal of items and cleaning, pet treatment if applicable, keys, and signing at closing. Everything in the contract is negotiable except the seller's disclosure is a Hawaii statute. It's a mandatory requirement. The rest of it, you can all kind of negotiate in or out or accordingly, either with a credit or a change in language. But overall, these are the recommended services for sellers. I am an agent who believes in being proactive. So if you are choosing to work with me, I will have you complete most of these items in advance so that we can avoid any hiccups or speed bumps during escrow. Thank you for listening to my podcast today. I hope you have a wonderful day. I look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions. And if you don't, that's great too. Mahalo for listening.